We're finishing the sixth paragraph of the Chassidic discourse, Chassidic speech, which was called essay, called Bati Lagani. The words Bati Lagani were said by God. King Solomon is quoting God, saying, I have come back to my garden. When God created the world, he was in the world. And because of the sins of man, as God's presence was driven away from the world, because that's why God created the world. Was that so that the world should be healthy and that God's presence should be felt in the world. But when man sinned, and it all depends on man, what man did. When man sinned, as it drove this presence further and further away, the world became more confused and sick, which encouraged people to do even more sins. There was the generation of the flood, etc., until came along Abraham. Abraham was the first person to realize that he has to reverse the process. He realized that what God wants is to be revealed here, and that in order to do that, it will require some self-sacrifice, some, I want to call it selflessness. Mm-hmm. Because the whole, what brought everybody into these problems was a over concentration on self. Too much self-consciousness, too much selfishness. And Abraham realized that he had to have what's called selflessness. What does it mean, selflessness? To think about God, not to think about yourself. Which is very difficult. But he did it. And he reversed the process, and he began a process of bringing God's presence back to the world until Moshe brought God's presence, another word for that is called the Shekhinah, to be revealed here in the world, in the tabernacle, in the desert. And eventually that became the temple in Jerusalem. And eventually in the future it will be the third temple, which will also be in Jerusalem. But then every Jew will also be a holy temple. And that's what our job is to do now, is to make ourselves into a holy temple, to reveal God within us and in the world immediately around us. But it depends on a little bit of selflessness, humility, humbling yourself in front of the truth. Call. Therefore, all the last word of the line is call, and it is 9 lines from the bottom of the page. Right? Therefore, call a giluyim, any revelations of God. Hu al yedei shiflus ve'bitlus, by means of humility and surrender. The bechinat malchut of this level, spiritually, Kabbalistically, it's called the aspect of malchut. Malchut means kingship. On one hand, kingship is the highest of all of the spiritual aspects that are below it, like a king. He's above all his people, but really a king is supposed to be totally negated to what's above him. He's the only one. He's the receiver of all of the directions from above, from God. That's the way it's supposed to be. And of course, from the Jewish king, it eventually morphed into what we call non-Jewish kings, the usurpers, etc., which still had a certain aspect of kingship to it. And that more or less ended with Napoleon. Napoleon destroyed the whole idea of a king that really ruled over everybody, made everyone equal. And therefore, the first Rebbe of Chabad was very, very against Napoleon, because even though the kings were evil people, but still they had some aspect of this, what's called kingship, someone whose whole essence was just devoted to what's above him. to receiving directions on how to direct the world, because that's what God wants, the world to be directed. So therefore, all revelations of godliness come by shiflus and bittul. Perhaps the best example we can bring for this is health in a person. When a person is healthy, what does he feel? He doesn't feel himself. What does he feel? He feels his purpose in the world. He can do his job. I go to an auto mechanic and say, how are your hands? He'll look at your hand, what, is something wrong? Something's bleeding or something? If his hands work, that means he doesn't feel them. Right? That's called healthy. That's called feeling alive. The same thing with the Shekhinah. If the Shekhinah is felt in the world, then what do people feel? They feel healthy. They feel spiritually healthy. They're not anxious. They're not depressed. They're not angry. They're not tense. All these things cause disease. Could be they cause all diseases. But the attitude of people, positive attitude, could be the cause of all diseases, anxiety, tension, selfishness. That's what's just talking about physical disease, physical health. So the same thing with spiritual health. Spiritual health comes from not feeling yourself, feeling the source of health, which is the Creator, and eventually to make the whole world healthy. So therefore, he says, any revelation of the Shekhinah is the life force of the world, or more exact, the purpose of the world. You feel your purpose, as that can only come through surrender and devotion to your purpose, to your responsibility to God and to the world. V'hine tokef godel tokef habakasha. This is the great power of this request of King David, that he said, Hatei Hashem oznecha, God, please incline your ear to me, listen to me, because I am poor and impoverished. We have to realize what this is. King David was maybe one of the holiest people that ever existed. He is the example of a king. Totally devoted to God every single moment of his life, and totally devoted to the Jewish people and to make the world a better place. And he was totally enveloped in, bombarded by troubles from the minute he was born. His whole life was troubles. If you don't believe me, look in the book of Psalms. All troubles. How could such a great person like that have so many problems? But he realized that these problems were put in front of him as challenges. Like a doctor gets sick people that comes into his office, right? You can imagine a doctor a psychiatrist putting a sign on his office: no crazy people, please. Right? Only normal people. A doctor, only sick, only healthy people. I'm sick already. It's going crazy. All these sick people, maybe something will get some germs. A doctor wants to deal with sick people. A psychiatrist with crazy people with problems. And David HaMelech realized that God was giving these problems in front of David in order that he should deal with them and heal them. But nevertheless, they were real problems. They were real, true problems. And King David was crying out to God, please, God, I can't do it on my own. Help me. And in the merit of what? King David could have said, help me because look at how much I've done for you. Look how much I'm suffering. He said, no, because I am poor, I have nothing. Help me, God, because I have nothing whatsoever. No merits. What does this mean? Because because he is poor and impoverished, he has nothing, he's empty. Shehu bechinat bittul means that he is totally surrendered. The bechinat malchut, this is the level of a true king. That he's totally surrendered to what's above him. Bezeru ot daled. This is represented by the letter daled. The spiritual source of this is the letter daled. To take the letter, which is not the case, letter resh. The letter resh hasn't got this little yud in the back of it. The letter resh is curved on the top. The letter daled has got a straight line, and then there's another line from the bottom that comes, but not at the end of the straight line, a little bit over to the left, which leaves a little yud hanging over. This little yud indicates that it's the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet, yud. According to the strict law, even a little dot can be a yud. She'ein bo bechinat a bittul. It hasn't got this level of bittul. The letter resh is lacking this little yud. Ba'adarabah, hu bechinat yeshut v'gasut. It is egotistical and selfish. Lochen, therefore, hu mi'atvan dechzayu. Therefore, the Zohar says that the letter resh is one of the letters that indicate al sitra bisha, on the bad side. The anius, dalus, this is another type of poverty and emptiness. This is poverty and emptiness of the bad side. What does it mean, poverty and emptiness? He's poor, he's far away from God, far away from meaning. It says there's some people who have the means, but they don't have the meaning. Some people they can have money, they have everything they want, but they don't know why they're here in the world, except for themselves. That's which a person has and doesn't feel any connection to God. The aniyut is dalat. This is the poverty and the emptiness of them. This makes them more egotistical and more egotistical. The more true connection that a person has with the Creator, with the source of life, the less is he likely to be depressed and angry and lustful and deceitful, etc. Rather, he knows his connection with God gives him a feeling of empowerment to do what he can to fix the world up, like King David. Kitzur, Dalet and Resh, these two letters of Dalet and Resh, Shneim, both of them mean the same thing, Dalut, poorness. But Dalet, in the Dalet, it's holy, because there's a little yud after it. Tachlit, a bittul, the ultimate surrender. And by means of this, a person becomes a vessel, empties himself out and becomes a vessel to receive. The Yam Shil Talmud, for instance, like a pupil, shetzorech liot beheder metziut, the pupil has to be empty. He has to be only with questions that he wants answered. He's listening to the teacher with thirst because he wants to receive. Be'eda Kabbalah, Masha Enkim, which is not the case in the letter Dalet, which is not the case in the letter Resh. Letter Resh. Okay. Zion. Behine. The letter Yud, now we are on the 7th paragraph. The letter Yud of this letter Dalet that transforms the Resh into a Dalet, a bad letter, into a good letter. And again, remember, these letters, God created the world from these letters. These letters are not part of the world. They are not just conveniences that people developed in order to communicate one with the other miraculously. But rather these letters are the sources of creation. They existed before the world existed, before there were people, before there were books. Man was created from letters. Na'aseh Adam, from letters Aleph, Dalet, Mem. And in the books of Kabbalah, there are long explanations about all of these letters and the importance of the letters. Especially there's one book which is called the Tikkuni Zohar. There are 70 explanations on just the letters of the word Breshit, first word on the Torah. How to rearrange the letters and what the letters mean. There's another book which was written before that, a Kabbalistic book called Sefer Yetzirah, the book of formation. It was said the secrets of creation which were given to Abraham. That's what it says in the beginning of the book. And there it explains also the secret of the 22 letters that the world was created, the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, their shapes, what the shapes of them were, etc. and how the shape of each letter indicates on the spiritual power and ability that it has, and like we're learning here in this month. The letter Yud. So these letters existed then before the world was created, before there was even spirituality. These existed. It says in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It says by let there be light. This light was the light that was before creation. It was created by God's speech. What this means, we have no idea. What it means, all the spiritual was created by letters. These letters exist before the spiritual. We don't really know what spiritual is. We can just talk about it. There are some people, very great tzaddikim, that they have more of a conception of this. That's especially the Arizal, the Rabbi Yitzchak Luria. But these ideas are brought to be practical in the teachings of Chassidut. So let's go. Practical means that it brings you love of God, fear of God, love of every Jew, love of the Torah, commandments, joy, happiness in doing the commandments. Hine, ha'od yud, this letter yud, which is attached to a resh that makes it into a dalid, which dalid is a good letter, masha bazeh, and this mechalek, it distinguishes, it changes the form of a dalid, mitamunat, resh, which makes change the shape of the letter dalid from resh, who me'achor of davka, it's behind the dalid. V'hayud im shehu od ze'ira, even though it's the smallest letter, mikol ha'otiot of all the letters, hine hu rosh l'kol ha'otiot, it's the beginning of all letters. If you learn how to write, it's very complicated and very wonderful to learn how to be a scribe, a Jewish scribe, to know how to write how to write the letters on the scrolls, which are found inside of tefillin, these boxes the Jews wear, and mezuzah, which is put on every door, and a Sefer Torah. The Sefer Torah is you have to know exactly how to write these letters. The letters have to be certain shapes, and if a mistake is made, then that could disqualify the whole mezuzah, or even an entire Sefer Torah, even an entire huge Torah, Sefer Torah that costs $50,000. If one letter is improper, it could disqualify the whole thing. It can be fixed up, but until it's fixed, it's disqualified. It has to be, but now the way that every letter is written, every letter starts off with a yud. Every letter starts off with, you put your pen on the parchment, and you make you draw the ink. That little spot that you make, that's already the letter yud. The letter yud is the beginning of all letters. The kol ot, every letter that is written by a Jewish scribe, techilato begins with the letter yud. V'hu ma shebiyud nivra ha'olam haba. This is what it says, that with the letter yud, all the spiritual worlds were created. As a pasuk that we say, we say it in a prayer which is called Uvol Etzion. It says biyud, and with hey sur olamim. God created the worlds with yud, the letter yud, and the letter hey. And explains that with the letter hey, God created the physical world, and with the letter yud, He created the future world, or He created the spiritual world. There's different ways of explaining this, but let's just say that with the letter hey, God created the physical world, and with the letter yud, He created all the spiritual worlds. Olam haba. The al zeh omer, it says ki kol b'shamayim ba'oretz, like it says that everything in the heavens and the earth. Targum, and the Aramaic translation of this is the achid b'shamaya u'ba'ora. The God is one in the heavens and in the earth. Now, the heavens and earth don't just mean the stars, what the astronomers deal with, and the earth is what the geologists deal with. No, that's also one meaning. But a deeper meaning is that God created the heavens means all the spiritual worlds, and the earth is the physical world, everything that's physical. Physical means also the stars, the galaxies. So God created the heavens, which means all the spiritual, and the earth. In other words, the spiritual worlds are only creations. God is not spiritual. God creates the spiritual. Or in another way of saying it, our God creates all the other gods that all the other religions worship. On these spiritual levels. Well, it says that God is one in the heavens and the earth. Achid b'shamayim v'oretz. This is the aspect of Yesod. This is the aspect we talked to previously about Malchut. Malchut was surrender. Well, right above Malchut in the 10 Sfirot is what's called Yesod. Any one of you have never seen the 10 Sfirot before, there's different ways of arranging them, but essentially there are Chachma, Bina, and Dat, that is intellect, which means conception, understanding, and realization. Then there are what's called these 7 emotions. But really these 7 emotions essentially are really only 5. Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, and Hod. This is hinted at by the prayer that King David says. You can see it is in Divrei Yomim. We also say it every day. L'cha Hashem ha-gedula, ha-gevura, ha-tiferes, va-netzach, va-hod. To you, God is the gedula. Gedula means greatness. That's chesed, unlimited. Gevura, tiferes, netzach, hod. That's the 5 main emotions. And then it says, b'kol b'shamayim v'oretz, that everything it belongs to you. And then after it says, l'cha Hashem ha-mamlucha, then after it says, to you, God is the kingship. So the word, the 5 main sfirot are mentioned, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, whereas Yesod. So it says Yesod is hinted at by Kol b'shamayim v'oretz. Everything in the heavens and the earth. What does it mean, everything? This is the unifying factor that unifies the heavens and the earth. The heavens are all the aspects above it, and the earth is Malchut, which is below it. Yesod, which is in Malchut, Shebechinat Malchut mekabel mimenu, that the level of Malchut receives from it. So in other words, we have the 3 top sfirot, which are intellect, and this also relates to human personality. And then we have the bottom 7. And from the bottom 7, the top ones are really emotions. That's called the heavens. And the bottom one, the very bottom one, is Malchut. That's the earth. What connects them is Yesod. Yesod is between the heavens, namely the main emotions, and earth, which is action. Eretz is the level of Malchut. V'hu she'al yedei sfirot Yesod. By means of this aspect of Yesod, which that's hinted at this little letter Yud that we're talking about. Hu yichud chesed v'gevura u'malchus. This unites the emotions, chesed, gevura, and malchut. Or in a simple way of saying it, it unites God's love and God's power with the world. Therefore, this Yesod is another name for a tzaddik. Tzaddikim are holy Jews. A tzaddik is a Jew that reveals his holiness. A tzaddik is what connects between the upper worlds and the lower worlds. Of a l'reish ein kol. But the poor person, like the letter reish, we said that's also the letter reish, is also a person who is spiritually poor. Ein kol, he's lacking this aspect of kol. He's lacking this aspect of surrender to Hashem, of connection to what's above him. The ba'ot reish, that in the letter of reish, which we said that's the source of all bad, all selfishness, egotism, false egotism, ein kol b'shamayim v'oretz. He's lacking this linking aspect that connects the heavens and the earth. She'ein lehem sfirot yesod means he's missing the sfirot yesod that's hinted at by this little letter Yud that's in the back of the Dalid that joins. In other words, he's not joined to anything except to what's below him. V'gam dibur, and also even speech. Hu bo b'tachlit ahelem v'hester. Even this letter of speech, to sisters not to do things, even to say things that are holy, is also closed. Like it says, Ne'lamti dumia hecheshesi mito. King David said, I was silent, I was quiet, I did not say anything, I was not able to say anything good. King David, when he was surrounded by evil people and only bad things were happening, it was withheld from him this as a spiritual, we call it the inspiration. When this spiritual inspiration is lacking, then a person he can't do anything holy, he can't say anything holy. The gama dibur bo b'tachlit helam, that even speech comes with the ultimate hiddenness. You could only cry out to God. It's something like the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. It cries out from a narrow place, cries out. There's no letters even. There's no letters. It's crying out from this narrow, from the darkness. Liyot the or v'chayot ha'machaya the sitra achra, because the light and the life force which enlivens all the forces of selfishness and evil, who is ha'ora de ha'ora chitzonius chitzonius, is only a ray of a ray and very, very far away. Ubechinat tachlit hahelam, and the ultimate concealment. What's the Rebbe saying here? Evil exists, and evil succeeds, and evil can also, flourish. Who knew better than the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe? He lived in a time when there was communist Russia. From the 20s, they were already taking people and killing them in the streets. And Hitler was in the meanwhile going and massacring as many people as he could throughout Europe. Evil was flourishing everywhere. Judaism was floundering. Jews were leaving Judaism. Jews were being murdered. They were 1/3 of the Jewish population of the world was murdered in the Holocaust. Who knows how many Stalin killed? And spiritually, Jews were being destroyed in America through assimilation, through watering down the Torah, watering down mitzvahs, denying the true Jewish identity. Judaism was in a terrible situation in those days, and evil, on the other hand, was flourishing. Right, the reform movement was growing, blossoming, just as lahavdil, as were the other movements and political movements in in Russia and in Europe, etc. That were just totally leaving Judaism, and for a good reason. I mean, because you see how much darkness there was. It just didn't pay to be a religious Jew. You had to go against the whole world, and that's exactly what the previous Rebbe did. He said, nevertheless, this is represented by the letter Resh. This is represented by a certain poverty of the truth, a lack of the truth. And where does it come from? God. How does God enliven a thing which is totally opposite him? He says he does it because, first of all, he wants there to be free choice in the world. And these people just took advantage of it. And it's enlivened in the end by a ray of a shining. It's like making counterfeit money. How does counterfeit money exist? Because there's such a thing as real money. If you make a counterfeit, then you have to really smile and you have to forge your papers so that people believe what you're doing. But counterfeit exists because it's an imitation of something that's really real. And this evil that we just talked about was an imitation of an imitation of an imitation of an imitation of God. God creates, God rules, God is the provider. In Russia they used to say Father Stalin, he provides, he creates, he rules. In Germany they were saying it was Hitler. V'zeu de Yaakov Omar yesh li kol. That's what Yaakov said, I have call, this level of call b'shamayim v'oretz. And Esav said, yesh li rav. Esav, his twin brother of Yaakov, said, I have a lot. And Kedusha, which is the level of Madrigas Yaakov, Omer Yeshli Kol. Yaakov said, I have everything I need. I've got everything I need. I don't need any more. My only goal now is to give. And Esav said, I have a lot, but I would like a lot more. Bechinit Kol, the Achid b'Shamayim v'Oretz. This is the level of Kol which unites the heavens and the earth. This is what we called before the level of surrender, the level of devotion, total devotion to the truth. But Esav, which is Klippa, Esav, which is this aspect of shell, external, and Sitra Achram, feeling separate from God, Omer Yeshli Rav. He said, I have a lot. Shehu ein lo bechinat Kol. Namely, he has not got this level which joins him, Kol, this level of Kol, this aspect of Yesod, the aspect of the Tzaddik, which joins him to what's above him, like Yaakov. Ki im Rav. He had this level of Rav. What does he mean, Rav? Riboy hashpot gashmit. He had a lot of physicality. You can ask yourself a question, why was it that Esav so desperately wanted the blessings of his father, Yitzchak, and he was so terribly, terribly disappointed when Yaakov tricked him and took these blessings? So the answer is that Esav wanted these blessings, one reason so that Yaakov wouldn't get them, and that he would control the world. And the other reason he wanted it was that he would have the power. He would have the spiritual power, that he would be able to do anything that he wanted to. Anything that he wanted to. That something like what Napoleon did, etc. Anything that he wanted would be done. And Yaakov knew that if Esav got these blessings, why did Yitzchak want to give him the blessings? Why? Because Yitzchak really thought that if he gave him a blessing of good, that Esav would suddenly come to his senses and would realize, hey, I'm one of the sons of Yitzchak. I'm the brother of Yaakov. I have to act properly. I have to be proper. But it's a very long process. And that's what the process that the Rebbe is talking about now. The Rebbe and the Chabad movement in general is trying to convince everyone that now is the time that we should shine good into the world. Now is the time we should shine meaning. We should be attached to what's above us. What is above us? The ideas that are explained in this book, the aspects of God, the essence of God, the purpose of God, our connection with God, our marriage with God, our responsibility to God, our responsibility to the world, to make this whole world a holy temple, and we do it by means of making ourselves a holy temple, coming close to the Creator of the universe with happiness and with total surrender and devotion to the truth. One minute.